Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to the Today in Manufacturing podcast, a new show with the editors from Industrial Media where we talk about the top news this week in manufacturing. With me today are Anna Wells and Jeff Ranke. We're editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News. We each have about 15 years covering the manufacturing industry. Each week, we take the 5 biggest stories on our website and discuss the implications they might have on the industry going forward. Before we get started this week, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live.
Thank you for listening
to the Today in Manufacturing
podcast. Did you see that? Look at how we have grown. We've done it. 200 episodes. I mean, Jeff, when we were sitting there socially distanced and quarantined in an office cubicle with arguably the heaviest office furniture we've ever carried. But I mean, that's a different point. Did you ever think we would make it to this point?
Never, David.
Not once.
Never.
No.
Couldn't imagine.
Did you think we'd make it past 5?
Is that a true question?
No. I mean, you know what? It's been an evolution.
100%. No, it's been awesome. I mean, we talk about this a lot, but just the way that the audience has responded to it. And it's not like anything else I've done in terms of the length of it, and the support that we've gotten has been pretty incredible.
Anna, I guess if you're going to launch a new digital media product in a pandemic, the one to do is probably a podcast, where you can kind of just come in from whereabouts unknown. But I mean, we had a pretty, we kind of cobbled it together at first. It was, looking at that intro that producer Alex put together before, it was kind of fun to see just how the production has changed, how the studio has changed, and the fact that, we have one now.
Yeah, I think the one thing that has not changed, and I just feel like it's something that we need to talk about, is your shirt.
Nope, not at all, not once.
You have been wearing that for 4 years and change.
But just like once a week. It's real easy. I mean, and actually, okay, so here's where I will kick that back to you guys. Yeah. I've been wearing this for the podcast for 4 years. And just 2 weeks ago, loyal listener Jordan reaches out and he's like, "Hey man, you got something going on with that collar." And I was just like, "Oh man, that must have been, the collar was kind of like peeking a little bit." And I'm like, "Man, I can't believe that happened that one episode." And then I went looking back and I'm like, "Oh my God. It's been like bad since, I just bought a bad shirt. I don't know."
You went back through 200 episodes and
I went back through 3 and I'm like, "Well, must have been there forever."
Well, you have transitioned from the long sleeved, just button up shirt to kind of the crew, I don't know, sweatshirt type thing, right?
Yeah, and this was like, this was born on necessity when my desk moved next to the window and all of a sudden it was winter and I was just like, this shirt is not going to cut it. So, it just turned into podcast shirt. I don't know. And it's, I'm a creature of habit. So any sort of change scares me. So there you go.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know how much deeper it's got to go than that.
Yeah, anybody who knows you would say you are super predictable.
Yeah. Well, producer Alex, thank you very much for putting together that intro. The one thing that is missing from the new studio, I don't know if you guys noticed it, we don't have any greens. We need that fake plant. Remember we used to have it in the background and we would slide it in different places, just kind of dressing up the back. We need a shrub, corner shrub.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Well, thank you to our loyal listeners, viewers, for the ongoing support. As Jeff said, we couldn't do it without you guys, and we really appreciate you being along for the journey. Before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our new sponsor, Stay Sharp with Razorleaf.
Digital transformation is reshaping manufacturing, and leaders must keep up with a rapidly changing technology landscape. Razorleaf, a global consulting and systems integration firm, launched Stay Sharp with Razorleaf, a podcast covering digital thread, digital twins, PLM, MES, data integration, and more. Whether you're a seasoned professional or new to digital transformation, this podcast will help you stay ahead of the trends. You can find Stay Sharp with Razor Leaf on all major podcast platforms. Tune in today.
Hey, we're back. This week's episode is brought to you by fellow podcaster Stay Sharp with Razor Leaf, the ultimate podcast for all things digital in the manufacturing industry. Each episode takes a deep dive into the multifaceted world of digital transformation, exploring topics such as the digital thread, digital twins, IDEs, model-based strategies, and delving into the frontiers of cutting-edge technologies like PLM, MES integration, and more. Jeff, all that's important. You got to know all that stuff in this industry. Yeah, you got to get on it. Got to stay sharp.
I hope you weren't hoping for a hot take there or something. Like,
yeah.
Was I supposed to disagree?
No.
I don't know.
Like fishing for a yeah. No.
Thumbs up.
All right. Our first story this week. Amazon tests 15-minute delivery. Bangalore, India is a tech hub and says Amazon is determined. And so, as a result, Amazon is determined to compete with other outlets in India's fledgling quick commerce business. So, according to Bloomberg, Amazon is testing 15-minute deliveries. Amazon says the initiative is a pilot that will roll out soon, and the product catalog will be specific to each neighborhood. Most likely, it's going to include groceries and household goods. The effort is going to be data-driven. The company says it can drill down to behavioral trends that are specific to the region. One example, which is totally realistic, would be a neighborhood with a lot of readers that is offered a quick commerce inventory with more books.
More books.
Just like all those huge book-focused neighborhoods in America these days that just are craving for more literature.
In 15 minutes.
That's right. I need it now. Bloomberg says the region in India has a growing middle class. One where quick commerce already has gained a foothold. Some grocers claim to be able to deliver goods within 10 minutes in the area. It is possible that, if effective, these quick commerce capabilities could spread across the globe. Amazon says the experiment could be a potential precursor to a broader rollout. Anna, does the world need 15-minute Prime?
Well, it depends on who you ask, I think. There's a lot of different takes on this concept of quick commerce, and I think the varied perspectives are pretty interesting. The core arguments, I think, against this idea are basically that quick commerce displaces small businesses in the name of convenience, for one. Two, people say that it pushes more of the labor force into the delivery economy, which can be kind of like ruthless, and gig-based stuff is not always the best job. And then third, the model itself, which encourages daily transactional type purchasing behavior, is wasteful. I found a blog that was written by Ashwin Wadekar, who is the director of global strategy at Gorillas, a quick commerce firm, where he says that these points are dystopian and highly exaggerated in their view of what quick commerce does and can be. He believes that more frequent sourcing of smaller quantities actually reduces waste. The argument is that with much smaller and more targeted inventory, people are when you go to the grocery store and you buy a ton of stuff and then you don't get to it in time, right? Oh, okay. So, the idea being like, if you're just doing this incrementally throughout the week, buying very small quantities in a lot more times, you're only getting exactly what you need. Okay. Maybe. I don't know if if that's, enough to sell me on the concept. I mean, to me, whether or not this is good for society or humans, honestly, we should have a capacity to be able to wait for things and want things, I think. Mm-hmm. But obviously, this is the type of concept that whether you agree with it or not, it's really going to only be applied in very specific environments, right? Yeah. That's a very densely populated area with a very small radius, obviously 10, 15 minutes. To me, this is more comparable to ordering room service than ordering from Amazon. I mean, you have a limited amount of stuff you can choose from. So, and if you look at the number of SKUs in like a traditional grocery store, that's something like the tens of thousands. This would be like 2,000, you know?
Yeah.
So are you taking business away from them in a significant way? I don't know. But you know, if it did roll out in the US, for example, which it did kind of during the pandemic, these types of quick commerce companies, it was very specific to like New York City, you know, like very dense urban areas again. And by the way, Gorillas, the firm whose strategy director I just quoted, they ultimately failed. Many experts believe that this business model, which was characterized as like kind of a cash burner because of the IT and advertising requirements to operate, was much better left in the pandemic when it was born. You know, if you look at what the needs were then for this type of thing, like it kind of makes more sense. Also, there was less traffic. And there, you know, this was kind of pre-crazy inflation. And now I think people are purchasing more with not just convenience in mind, but cost in mind. And so that I think takes a lot of the impetus out of the need for this. So I'm just not sure. I mean, if anyone can make it work, is it Amazon? Maybe, because they are logistics experts and they have the IT infrastructure already to kind of have a leg up on whatever they're doing here. Maybe it does work for them, again, in these very specific areas, but I don't see this being like a catch fire kind of thing.
Yeah, and in these very specific areas, I think it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because you need these specific, highly dense areas that are within close proximity to these resources. But as a result of living there, kind of getting these by yourself is just as easy. So that's why, for me, I was trying to think of, is there anything that I would need in 15 minutes? And I mean, other than like, honestly, I couldn't really think of anything. Like, unless it was late at night and it was a day like today, it's 1 degree out, and I needed something for like a kid's lunch that was non-negotiable, which I still don't know what that would be. You know, maybe then I would try and get that delivered within 15 minutes. But I really struggled to try and think of an example where I would use the service.
Like if you're at work, I think, and you're like trying to finish a project and you want someone to bring you an apple, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay, so like as an alternative to like for like another meal service that you would have delivered?
Kind of like, so they said that this area where they're trialing this service is a tech sector.
Yeah.
So potentially people are just kind of chained to their desk all day. But again, back to my point about this is more like ordering room service. I feel like if it's that close to you already, to your point, you're just getting it from whatever local store, but it's really a warehouse and someone brings it to you.
Well, so Jeff, to the point of the tech sector, that makes sense to me, right? Because I have a neighbor works heavily in the tech sector and has everything delivered. You know, there are so many times where I'm going to get the mail or I'm coming home, just boxes piled in front of the front door, right? And I'm like, do you want me? I'm at the grocery store. Do you just want me to get it for you? And basically, he uses all of these ordering and delivery services because he just says, my time is more valuable spent in other ways than shopping. And I was just like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I just go and do that to decompress, but whatever, be plugged in all the time. So I can kind of understand that. But I mean, I pose the same question for you. Is there anything you need in 15 minutes or less?
100%. My battery died the other night. It would have been great to just punch it up and have a new battery delivered.
Like your car battery?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of automotive applications, I think, where this could definitely fit. Same thing from a pharmaceutical perspective. You've got a sick kid at home. It's one of those things where they have to take it every 3 hours.
Oh, yeah. If all of a sudden
saving the amount of time that it takes between those doses and having the DayQuil or NyQuil there and sooner, 100%. And I think that's one of the things when we look at quick commerce here that came to my mind. I think it fits in certain applications. To try to apply some of these technologies universally is where companies get in trouble. If they can figure out some of these niche uses and grow it from there, I think it has a greater chance to become more adoptable. I also worry, kind of what you mentioned, both of you talk about here. Man, I know some people, they would never leave the house. If this is something that was that easy to do and it's that affordable, I think that's the other thing that wasn't really discussed here too much is, does this increase delivery costs? What does this do here from a price perspective?
Is it a premium service or is it a premium price on the product?
How is that going to work? And I would think too, we talk about sort of that that economy of delivery people and stuff, I would almost think this is something you have to embed into your infrastructure. Like you've got somebody dedicated to delivering products, or you start looking at stuff like drones. And seeing if that can work out. So that could also push another technology forward. I do think this is the next step in e-commerce. This is going to happen in some way, shape, or form, someplace. I don't know what the exact fit is. Again, those are the two markets that instantly came to my mind in terms of where it could be successful. I think where it comes down to when you look at e-commerce growth rates, we had that huge spike during 2020, 2021 in terms of how frequently e-commerce was used. That slowed to a point where it's growing at a slower pace than it has since 2009. So if you are an e-commerce dependent company or technology provider, this is the next step for you. And I think that's where it's going to get maybe greater breadth and greater attempts at making it work than it would otherwise, because it is something that's just embedded into our culture now.
No, the pharmaceutical example is a really good one because, man, there have been those nights where you need that children's ibuprofen. And sometimes you have to go to 1 or 2 stores, 3 stores to find it. And so I totally understand that if it's guaranteed. But one thing that Anna also brought up was the cost of marketing, right? Because I imagine that this is a menu of 2,000 items that has to change, let's say seasonally. All of a sudden in start October, November in Wisconsin, they're half the list of items goes to cold and flu season items, but what does it cost to let people know that that's now within that 15-minute capability? Or does it not matter? Does it is it something where you're already looking for it online and it just happens to be available in 15 minutes and so you get it? Or is it that you go and buy it from there because you know it's available? Jeff?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I mean, really, those types of things always figure themselves out as a technology matures.
Yeah.
Initially, yes, there's probably additional costs and additional challenges with it. But as people become more familiar with it and as more solutions providers come into a market where there's opportunity, those things do resolve themselves over time. I mean, just look at the things we've seen in all the different facets of software availability and manufacturing over the last even 200 episodes or further out. I mean, when you look at things that are now available from a supply chain menu or whatever the case may be, it does catch up. But how do you get that level of adaptability or people really embracing the technology? I think that's the first step. How do you achieve that?
Yeah.
So
I think too that you would have to make a distinction between, it sounds like the business model has a very high cost per transaction for the seller. So if they're bundling that into the consumer price, which I'm sure that they are, automotive applications like a car battery, if you're stranded on the side of the road, absolutely I would pay a premium to get that thing really fast. Would I do so for a frozen pizza? I don't know. So you have to look at the product categories that are available.
Yeah.
David, you would.
I was just saying that there are specific times, but for the most part, are you using this service regularly? Because if you have to pay a $7 surcharge or whatever, your pizza costs 40% more because of how much it costs to bring it to you that quickly. Are you going to be a repeat user of that with any sort of frequency? I don't know. No, not at all. But can I pose a dystopian hypothetical to you?
Of course.
All right. So as we talk about being more and more connected and, everyone talks about their phone and other devices listening to them. We're talking about a particular band or a concert. All of a sudden we get an ad fired, all of this contextual advertising. What if we are approaching a future where everything is so connected that they know that you just had a virtual visit with your kid's pediatrician and all of a sudden you're getting ads for 15-minute delivery of children's ibuprofen?
Pass.
Yeah. No, that's a problem. I thought you were going to go like the old pirate question there.
Oh.
Like peg leg or hook hand or something like that. Really throwing it back in our...
I still go peg leg. I'd rather have 2 hands than 2 legs.
Okay.
I mean, no? You were hook hand?
Hook hand for sure, yeah.
Okay. Why was it again?
I go with the hook hand because you can put different stuff on there.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Because of the end effectors.
And no one is messing with you if you have a hook instead of a hand, first of all.
I mean...
Secondly, you can still run. I don't know.
That's true. Just like the sound it would make when tapping, I feel like would be very intimidating. Can we pick the hand foot?
Yes.
Oh, I think, if we're just...
Yeah.
spitballing here. Yeah.
You, producer Alex wanted to know whether or not you get to pick one or the other. And yes, that so is the nature of the hypothetical.
Right or left?
Oh, you pick right or left? Yeah. Okay. So if it was your left, it would be different. Like if it was your predominant hand, you wouldn't take the hook. Okay, that makes sense. Sound argument. Our next most popular story this week: electric bus company suspends production at brand new plant. In July 2023, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker cut the ribbon at the Lion Electric EV bus plant in Joliet. At the time, the company had grand plans to make 20,000 electric buses annually. But the company had problems that started almost immediately. In August, a little more than a year after the grand opening, Lion announced 4 rounds of layoffs company-wide. And it looks like things have gone from bad to worse. The bus company is completely suspending operations at the plant and laying off 400 workers in the United States and Canada. After the cuts, some 300 workers will remain to sell, deliver, and provide customer service for buses that are already made. The layoffs are temporary, but maybe not. Lion received a 2-week credit extension to deal with financial problems after it failed to meet sales goals. Joliet Mayor Terry D'Arcy says the company is looking at every option, including a potential sale, a Hail Mary that could reopen the plant. Anna, it seems simple to me. Make more sales and soon, or die sooner.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. It's I think like Hail Mary is an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of positive news to back up this specific story. It's not like, we hit a bump in the road, but look at our track record. No, the whole track record's been pretty bad so far. So that's alarming, kind of a bleak outlook maybe. So when I looked back through on this post to see if there were any comments from our readers, and I saw one that I thought we could address here. Someone asked, does anyone have insight into why their buses flopped? Was it high prices, insufficient range? It seems to me that the electric school buses make perfect sense, long downtime and short duty cycle. I agree. Those are good points. So I thought that I would, at least address that. Yeah. Yes, like if you look at school buses being EVs, like this is a great application for them. They don't encounter the type of barriers you get with consumer EV adoption, like lack of public infrastructure or range anxiety, because typically they're only going on these short runs and then they all sit together nicely parked in a fleet parking lot at night. And it's a great opportunity to recharge every day, Mm-hmm. My first guess was that dealing with school district funding probably leads to a lot of variability for a company that is directly marketing to those entities. Mm-hmm. Looks like I was maybe half right on that. So Lion says that some of their major cash flow issues were stemmed from timing challenges. They say funding timing from the US EPA, mm-hmm. as well as continued delays and challenges with subsidies to customers related to a Canadian zero-emission transit funding program. That's what led to the cash flow crunch. So this is a Canadian company. Mm-hmm. But that's not all. So the Portland Press Herald, and that's Portland, Maine, took Lion down a bit in a recent article about a program where they say that 8 school districts in Maine were provided Lion buses mm-hmm. through this contract. So the report was pretty ruthless. It described the buses as very defective and a problem from the word go, saying they have wreaked havoc throughout the state.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So they detailed sudden shutdowns, power steering failures, short circuiting due to water leaking, this whole ball of quality wax that they say resulted in the whole fleet of buses being grounded at one point. So I think the concern then becomes twofold, right? You absolutely cannot have school bus reliability issues. That's just, you just can't.
Yeah.
And then 2, as the Portland Press Herald notes, eliminating buses from a school fleet before the terms of a federal grant are up may result in the paying back of that grant money, an awkward reality that has districts opting to try to stay the course. Game over, right? I mean, I don't, once you start to have concerns about this massive investment not working out for you and your school system. I mean, not to mention that budgeting for school districts is so contentious and often they're on a shoestring. This would be a huge financial ask of any school district in America to replace their entire fleet with a new fleet of buses. And if they don't work all the time, and people start hearing about this because of reports like these, I don't see how you come back from that.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know. It sounds like between, the cash crunch and then the fact that now these buses are out in the market and they're not selling themselves, this could be it for Lion.
No, that is, I understand how the complicated dance that is organizing your bus schedule for your school district, regardless of the size of your community. So I can't imagine, throwing a couple extra wrinkles into that and the impact that would have throughout the community. Jeff, doing this for 4 years, we've heard a lot of the same through lines and a lot of different stories. And one that seems to always pop up and kind of make me go like, if only, is when they say, hey, there's a chance we're going to sell this baby and we're back in business. And I just feel like we've heard that. And 99% of the time that means nice try. And then there's that 1% where they're just like, we did it. Someone bought it, and it just happens to be a good fit. But one of the points that you make a lot, hey, it is hard to be a startup. It is hard to be a startup in a completely new technology. And electric buses, I mean, you got a lot of moving parts there, man.
Yeah. So in a real flip of the script here, I'm actually more optimistic in this one than you guys.
Quite the flip.
Looking at a couple different dynamics here. First of all, so Lion does, in addition to electric school buses, they also have trucks that they run. Now, the trucks are the much lesser portion of their business, but it is there. And they do have a fair number of those out there as well. They do have existing deals with some bigger players like Amazon and stuff like that. So there is that, at least to start from. Now, what I found in my research is there's approximately a little more than 4,000 electric school buses currently on the roads right now. Half of those are Bluebird, okay? They are the 800-pound gorilla in this marketplace. They are the biggest, best out there, I guess you could say. They recently sold their 2,000th electric bus.
Wow.
So the other half is Lion, essentially. The lion's share of the remaining buses out there do belong to this company. So there is something to be said for the fact that they are establishing a track record. Now, they've had reliability issues, okay? That is going to come up with any new product that is part of the deal, and that is hard to overcome. I'll agree with that 100%. However, a lot of those things, as Anna alluded to, that are part of the electric vehicle sort of adversity or dynamic where people are not embracing them, does go away here because they do have a 160-mile range on these buses, which is enough for a bus route for sure. The other thing that comes into play here, though, is that they're twice as expensive as an internal combustion engine bus. So if you can buy a 2-for-1, that's hard on school districts to begin with. I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of different things working against them here, but the things that are working for them is they do have a lot of vehicles out there. They've got 1,500 vehicles on their what they call their vehicle log sheet or whatever your sales book.
Oh, yeah. The log
so these are vehicles that are supposed to be delivered between now and the end of next year. Now, it doesn't mean they're made or anything like that.
Nobody to make them.
But they've been purchased and are set for delivery. So some of them, I think they're waiting for them to be delivered to get some cash infusion to hopefully make the rest of them and keep this thing going. The other reason that they can be optimistic, in addition to the fact that they are competing with Bluebird, which is a company who you would assume they've already got contracts with these school districts, and it's a lot easier to transition from a different type of vehicle from someone you know than to someone you don't.
Yeah.
But they are competing with them right now. I think shutting down may have been a good call so they can get some of this cash flow coming in here, sell what they've got to sell so they can finish off the rest of these orders. They also have a company in Canada, Mock Capital, who's an investment arm. They're looking to invest as much as $90 million into this company. So they could get at least that second shot at trying to make this work. We know the market's there. We know they at least have the ability to compete on the front end with somebody like Bluebird. I think there should be reason for optimism here.
So are you optimistic that the company as is continues and employees come back, or are you more optimistic that the company is sold?
I'm optimistic that if they can get this cash flow without being sold, this is just an investor. Okay. And they can finish off the rest of those buses that they need to, the rest of those vehicles, I should say. They're not all buses. I think they've got a chance here. Okay. And if they can get more vehicles on the road to get them proven and demonstrate a more solid track record, that's Maine. That's one place that hasn't worked out. There have been other places. And you can always point to the fact that, you know what, every vehicle goes through this stuff. But I do think they're under higher scrutiny because of who they are and what their product is. Yeah. However, if they can get this second wind, I could see these folks coming back. I could see the company continuing to hold out for a little longer at least and see what happens there.
What do you think the opposite of like the lion's share is? Is it like the mouse's bite? What is the lion in this lion bluebird comparison?
After the lions, don't the hyenas come and get the rest?
I guess. I don't know.
You know?
The scraps?
You're down with the idioms. Do you know if there's like a...
it's the crow pile.
The crow pile? Oh, she had me.
Yeah, you totally sold. I was gonna say, this is like an Andy Zoll question.
Yeah,
he's probably sitting out there, you idiots.
Yeah,
it's this, duh.
How have you never heard of the crow pile? Anna, are you surprised by Jeff's optimism on Lions prospects?
Kind of. I mean, it's refreshing. It's also good to have, I think, a counterpoint. I mean, you know me, I love electric vehicles. I hope that they can do this. I mean, I don't love like the kids standing there by the diesel bus breathing in all that exhaust, an emission-free bus, great. Like for kids, So, I mean,
how much quieter they are. Now that my kids aren't on the bus.
They're so quiet.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they were quieter going through the neighborhoods.
So sorry to keep you up.
We are certainly at least 4 years older than when we started. Why is it so loud out there? So loud.
Damn kids and their school buses. Jeff yells out the window.
And I shake my fist.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't have a screen on that window. Like, I don't know, like it's 1890 or something. I'm just leaning out the window and shaking my fist.
They should have brought in Bluebird. Oh, my goodness. Our next most popular story this week. Anheuser-Busch to invest $10 million in a Florida brewery. Anheuser-Busch recently announced a $10 million investment in its North Florida brewery. The project includes upgrades to the facility, which originally opened in 1969, as well as updates to critical plant infrastructure and manufacturing equipment. According to Craig Tomeo, the brewery's senior general manager, the company has been operating in Jacksonville for 55 years. He says the investment will not only improve the local facility, but also make positive economic impact on the surrounding community, most likely as a result of the job retention. Anheuser-Busch employs some 1,000 workers at 4 facilities in Florida. The company has invested more than $490 million, nearly $500 million on capital projects in the state to date. Anna, it seems like Anheuser-Busch has transitioned from a death by 1,000 cuts to life by 1,000 investments.
Do you say these out loud before?
Hasn't it?
Okay.
It's math. He's done the math here.
It's okay.
I'm just, in terms of the turmoil that Anheuser-Busch has gone through from a PR perspective, the way that it has sort of invested in, I don't want to say drips and drabs because we're talking about tens of millions of dollars, but how they very carefully invested in facilities all across the U.S. And kind of turned the tide. Yeah,
I mean, I think it is a very positive reflection on Anheuser-Busch. They have been maintaining this specific facility already. So according to them, this Jacksonville brewery is the most efficient brewery in their entire global network of AB and Bev. They said that since 2008, the brewery has reduced water usage by 50% and electricity usage by 23% while brewing the same volume of beer.
Okay.
Not bad.
That's impressive.
So in November, the company also announced a similar investment, this one in a Houston facility of $14 million for improvements. Over the last 5 years, Anheuser-Busch has invested nearly $2 billion in its facilities across the country, and there's 120 of them. They say with their distribution partners, they employ 65,000 Americans. To your point, I know that Anheuser-Busch has taken some flack in recent years, and they've also faced some market headwinds, as we know. But I do believe that they have it right when they focus on this type of incremental investment in these facilities to slowly modernize them, because we have seen the other side of that trap, which is, kick that can down the road because you're more focused on short-term profitability and you don't want to make the investment. And then suddenly you're at this point where the facility is too old to fix. And then you have to decide, like, are you going to start from scratch and build something new, which is tremendously expensive? Are you going to close it and consolidate production in your other plants, which we've seen happen so many times? And even if it's a one-to-one trade jobs-wise, it's still incredibly disruptive for people who are not going to make that move or whatever. It's still job losses, even if it's job gains somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I was impressed, I think, to see that they were really playing the long game on this with their facilities, because I do think that sometimes companies will, and not to disparage manufacturers in general, but I do think companies sometimes say, we'll get to it. We'll invest in that later. Right now is not a good time. And it's never a good time, So to make that a priority, I thought was pretty good.
So $2 billion spread out across 120 facilities. Some would say that's life by 1,000 investments.
Some would say. But the other side of that coin, too, is that we have seen people that have kicked the can, but we've also seen people, and Anheuser-Busch isn't a great example because they have the coffers, but where people put too much money into an overly state-of-the-art manufacturing facility that isn't necessarily needed at the time, something that they're going to grow into, and they kind of become cash strapped as a result of overinvestment. Right. But that's what my point is around the incremental updates, is just kind of keeping up with it. Sometimes it's $10 million here or there every so often that you're doing that, but it really pays off in the end when you can stay, since 1969 and still be in this facility that's considered like really state of the art. Like that's really positive news, I would say.
No, that's a win. And Jeff, I think a lot of times when, especially in our industry, sometimes people think, it's not news unless it's $100 million investment and 1,000 jobs, in terms of creation. Yeah. But I think that the popularity of this story in particular, our third most popular story, really speaks to how smaller facilities with fewer workers, smaller investments still have a very big impact on the industry as a whole.
It also shows we should run more stories on beer.
That was my second point. Just always talk about beer.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, when you look at what Budweiser's done over the last, let's say 6 months, we've got here in Jacksonville, we've seen it in Houston, St. Louis, LA. They've all made these like $20-ish million investments in these facilities to upgrade them and improve them. Makes a lot of sense, and it's good to see them not only doing that, but also it feels like they've weathered that Bud Light storm a little bit, and they're coming through. They had very positive projections coming out of the last quarterly report in terms of earnings were up, projections in terms of profitability were up, all of those things. So it's good to see them reinvesting in the business. There's also a part of me, and this is going to come up a couple times here. It seems like I can't get away from this, but if you're Budweiser and you're looking at the top 10 beers made in the U.S., what is the number one beer right now in the U.S. as far as retail sales go?
Isn't it Modelo?
Modelo.
Yeah.
Guess what number 7 is?
Bud Light?
Corona.
Oh.
Where are both of them made?
Mexico.
Mm-hmm. What's going to happen potentially in the next couple of months? A huge tariff on anything coming from Mexico. So I think there's also a potential strategic perspective here. Now, granted, all these things are put in place months and months ahead of time before we hear about it. But I think it also makes sense just from a strategic perspective of there is the potential to see some significant price increases from these two other very popular beers. Let's be in a position to capitalize on it from a demand perspective.
Interesting
If
point.
we do have the opportunity to take over because these are more expensive, let's be ready to take back number one with Bud Light. Let's be ready to sell more Budweiser or Busch Light or whatever the case is. Busch Light. But whatever the case is, any of those beers, they could be in a position to capitalize on those things as well. And having the expanded operational capacities and technologies makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Is Modelo that is distributed in the U.S., that is manufactured in Mexico?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything made by Modelo and Corona, or those labels, they're brought in through Constellation Brands. Okay. They're basically an importer, distributor.
I mean, and there has to be points for Anheuser-Busch in terms of countering all the backlash in terms of the marketing campaigns that they've come out now with Post Malone and Shane Gillis. Like, they know what they're doing. They got, I don't know who was swapped out, but they've got some smart heads at the table right now. And they're entertaining. I just got to say I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the resurgence. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Famed workwear maker. That is real easy to say. Famed workwear maker moving from Texas to California. What do Tesla, Oracle, Chevron, Hewlett-Packard, and Toyota Motor North America all have in common? Each company has moved its headquarters from California to Texas for many reasons, but the top one is cost. It's cheaper with more favorable tax policies. But one longtime manufacturer of workwear and other apparel is going the other way, from Texas to California. Workwear brand Dickies is moving from Fort Worth, where it was established more than 100 years ago, to the OC, Orange County. But the motives behind the move are similar to those before it. Money. VF Corp, Dickies' parent company, wants to consolidate its footprint in Southern California. So it's merging Dickies' operations with sister company and famed California shoe brand Vans, all at a campus in Costa Mesa early next year. The company says the move will help optimize the VF's real estate portfolio and allow the teams from two iconic brands to collaborate and share best practices. The move will impact 120 jobs, but Dickies will still operate a distribution hub in Fort Worth, as well as a warehouse and its nearby storefronts. VF Corporation also owns Timberland, North Face, and JanSport. Jeff, what do you think a potential collaboration between Dickies and Vans looks like?
I think, in looking at a lot of the analysts in this sector, they basically boiled it down to like, this is all about real estate. Is what it really comes down to, and cutting costs and saving money, which makes a lot of sense. When you look at what VF Corp has been dealing with, these brands are all down in sales in the double digits. They're all down between 10 and 15%. They've been struggling this year. And I think that sort of illustrates one of the ongoing challenges within the apparel, textiles type industry, where you've got a lot of inexpensive stuff coming in from all different parts of the world that kind of make it tough if you are a little bit higher priced brand to justify the repeat sales. Dickies in particular, I think, is in a really tough spot. Mm-hmm. This is a legacy brand, and I think the people who buy their products, I'm one of them. I mean, their socks, that's what I wear all winter. I love them. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more. But I think there are a lot of people who see those lower priced options and are like, what am I really getting in exchange here? Dickies also, they are who they are in terms of appealing to the blue collar trades type wear, that type of apparel. So it's not fancy. It's very straightforward. So it's not super expensive. The prices are still reasonable, but I think that also potentially lumps them in with some of those lower cost folks. They're not high end enough to distinguish themselves that way, but they still cost more than the lower cost options. Yeah. So they need to do something with that brand, I think, to really distinguish themselves without alienating their core group of customers. So I think they're in a tough spot there. So cutting costs in any way, shape, or form is something they have to evaluate and look very closely at, even though they probably didn't want to move. I mean, 120 jobs, nobody just blows that off, is not a big deal, especially when you're moving your corporate headquarters here. I think they're in a tough spot. There may be some more painful activities going through for these and some other U.S. brands that we see here. I mean, this is one of those things where, again, not to hammer this topic, but when they look at those tariffs that are being placed on stuff coming from Mexico and China, Dickies, that's where they make the vast majority of their stuff. They have a huge plant in Mexico. You wonder how this is going to play out a little bit, because if those costs need to get passed along to the consumer, how is the consumer going to feel about that? Are they going to continue to buy that brand? Or are they going to go that tier down and buy something else, even though that one's also going to be more expensive? Yeah, it's going to be a really tough situation to manage, I think.
But it's we've seen this type of story all of the time, where you have a company that is just hamstrung, and they're looking at significant losses, and this is their way of just making it stay alive. It's like, it's hard when you're looking at the numbers and the amount of people, stuff like that. But I mean, this might be what it takes for that brand to continue to survive. Anna, one thing that has kind of surprised me is that with the Dickies brand, is that sometimes a lot of these brands that were more associated with like blue collar workers have kind of transcended into more pop culture and become more of a more of a viral brand. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of surprised that we haven't seen that with Dickies yet. Like that it has kind of just stayed like workwear, blue collar apparel, and that's about it.
Yeah, you never know when someone's going to have their lightning moment, I guess. But
you need the right influencer to flash that logo.
Yeah,
get those influencer dollars out there.
Maybe I don't know. Jeff made a lot of really good points. There's a lot of challenges, especially in the apparel market, and I also wonder too if what the impact is for a company like Dickies or Vans that has a product that could be very easily knocked off, and they've put all this money into branding, and that these marketplaces, they're just playing whack-a-mole really with the fake sellers, but they're out there like crazy. People buying the wrong stuff because they don't even know that it's a fake.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, that's not what I came here to talk about, though, you guys.
No,
you
not the crazy amount of Dickies knockoffs that you see being sold out of the back car.
No, that wasn't it. I want to talk a little bit about California. I think the reason that this article got a lot of clicks, people were drawn to it, was because it kind of goes against the classic narrative around California being bad for business and that people are fleeing California and no one's going there. And,
Right.
Jeff raised a great point about like the real estate portfolio and how it makes sense to consolidate these operations. And if you already have this space, like what can you do to leverage that? I think, I was looking into this a little bit to see just how big of an edge Texas or another state, like say in the South or something that you hear about getting a lot of manufacturing businesses in, how much of an edge they have over a place like California. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more nuanced than we would think. I know that's strange. Nuance.
It is wild that it's not just like, go here, more money.
Yeah.
Equation over.
Black or white. Mm-hmm. So for one, when you look at the actual data, and I think this is probably pretty obvious because California is such a populous state, but they do have the most manufacturing businesses of any state in the U.S. By far. Yeah. And then they also employ the most manufacturing workers. So, the other data point that I found that bears representation, I think, in the discussion is the corporate tax rate. And that's what you, I think, always think about, like the corporate tax rate being high. California's is the 6th highest in the nation at 8.8%. But if you compare that to a state like Pennsylvania, which is one we'd consider, I think, at least in a national discussion, as being kind of like a manufacturing powerhouse, mm-hmm. Pennsylvania's is 8.5%. Yeah. Minnesota's is higher than California's. Illinois is higher than California's. But my point is that like that's no one talks about that.
Oh no, California's the worst.
It's California is the worst, and so it's really kind of an assumption. I know that more goes into it, right? Labor rates, regulation, cost of real estate, all of that stuff. But like California's property tax index is in the lower half of the states. They don't tax inventory. They have the infrastructure. They have the ports, the highways. They have the workforce, Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of great things about setting up in California. And it's not like everybody is in, dead center Bay Area, San Francisco. I mean, there's a lot of like inexpensive areas in California actually to work and live. And so I think it's important to remember when we make these broad assumptions that you can make any relocation effort make financial sense. To your point, there's pros and cons to every area. For example, you could find a super cheap property in a very remote area and set up there, but can you find workers? Can you recruit people to come and live there? Do you have roads? Do you have utilities? Do you have infrastructure? Like all of those things factor into this. It's not just an issue of like, does Texas have a corporate tax rate or not? Or, is California considered a high cost of living place to be? Well, yes, but like when you really drill down to some of these data points, it's not just fully apples to apples there.
No, we've talked to many companies that have set up in somewhat smaller communities near more larger metropolitan areas, hoping to draw talent from there. But as these companies have grown into massive operations, they're out of people.
Yeah.
They've drained the well, man. And I sometimes I don't think that that's taken into consideration. And it is, it's just also the politically divisive nature of our culture right now where California left, Texas right, nothing in between.
Right.
So you said California was 5th?
Sixth.
So Minnesota and Illinois. Do you know the other ones that were on top of them?
I can look it up again.
I was just curious because that threw me. I would have never guessed. Maybe I would have guessed Illinois, but not Minnesota.
Well, Hawaii's always like an outlier if they're included in those lists.
Alaska was in the top 5, I think.
Okay. That makes sense. And to the point about people counterfeiting Dickies, apparently it is quite the issue. The company even has a authenticity statement regarding its brand protection on its website, where they have a hotline where you can actually you can check for the retailer locator, and they have a hotline where you can call 1-800-Dickies to make sure you have legit pants.
Really?
And they have this really great statement where it just says, authentic Dickies brand merchandise is not sold by street vendors. Just want to spell it out, just in case you didn't know.
All right, so here are the top 5. Minnesota, number 1.
Okay.
9.8%.
Wow.
Illinois, Alaska, New Jersey, and
Then Hawaii?
I think D.C.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, not exactly what you would expect. I was really surprised, too, to how close Pennsylvania and California were.
Well, and I give Governor Newsom a lot of credit. Anytime these stories come up, he has that same line where he's just like, the same thing you said. We have the most manufacturers. We have the most manufacturing workers still, despite this, flight to Texas.
Sorry, Maine was number 5.
Okay. Any surprise for you, Jeff, on that list?
Maine. Yeah, that one would not have. That's kind of an out. That's surprising. I was expecting New York to be in there someplace.
Yeah.
New York's corporate tax rate is lower than Wisconsin's.
Really? Wow. Where's Wisconsin?
Number 12.
Oh, man. High. Just high. All right. Well, our next most popular story. Stoli faces bankruptcy following a cyber attack. Stoli vodka has been a long, well-reputable fixture on the liquor market since 1938. However, it looks like the vodka giant might not see its 100th birthday. Stoli Group's U.S. subsidiaries, Stoli Group USA and Kentucky Owl, have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. While the reasons behind the move are many, the one that stands out is the role an apparent ransomware attack played. A cyber attack in August prevented U.S. subsidiaries from complying with their lenders' reporting requirements. According to the Cyber Risk Alliance, the attack was, quote, not widely reported and has not been claimed or attributed to any specific ransomware group. The attack took down Stoli's ERP system, which caused the company to create costly manual workarounds. These systems won't be fully restored until at least early next year. But Stoli has had other issues. For example, in a desperate rush to distance itself from its Russian roots after the country's Ukrainian invasion, the brand ditched the Chernaya in its name. The company's owner, Yuri Shefler, is also a longtime Putin critic. And while the company operates out of Latvia, Russia has repeatedly tried to claim Stoli as a state-owned business. Inflation and demand fluctuations haven't helped. And as things have snowballed, Stoli has accumulated $84 million in debt. Anna, in your opinion, how close are we to pouring one out for Stoli?
I think that remains to be seen. I'll just pour one out anyway.
Okay.
Just
a just in case pouring one out?
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly.
Like a maybe?
Yeah.
Just like, doesn't look good.
I'm not going to be drinking that, so I might as well just pour it out
preemptively. Yeah, this one's for the company. Whoa, just not the whole, the whole bottle.
No, I don't, yeah, toilet, yep, okay. Not anything against Stoli. I'm just not drinking straight vodka very often. So
I mean, that's fair. I mean, the shooters of straight vodka day is long past, right? Mostly.
So I thought it was interesting when you looked at the varied headlines and how this was covered, just by the media at large. So ours was Stoli faces bankruptcy following Cyberattack. That was a common variation that you would see. But like the New York Post said, Stoli filed for bankruptcy after Cyberattack, legal feud. And Fortune's headline was, struggling budget vodka maker Stoli has filed for bankruptcy as Gen Z turns away from alcohol.
Oh.
To me, that was interesting. It felt like this grab bag of reasons kind of illustrated how much was stacked against Stoli in this situation. It's like you could just take your pick of what to blame, and I think that was largely true, whatever you said.
Yeah.
Like all of it is to blame. And Stoli has said as much, right? That while the cyber attack was a major part of this, it was a combination of several factors that resulted in the company piling up tens of millions of dollars in debt. And if you look at the average figures, and I don't know if you covered this in your intro, David, but like the end of the article talks about a Sophos report on the state of ransomware that they just published. And it talks about how these types of attacks are increasing, and also they're increasing in cost.
Yeah.
And they said that the average cost is now nearly $3 million per incident. And that's up about 50% over last year.
Yeah.
$3 million per incident, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money. But Stoli is in the hole a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more than that. And it just seemed like dramatically more. And so I'm wondering what actually happened here. Like, did they pay a ransom? They're not saying that they did. They're a private company, so I guess they would not have to disclose that. But it does seem like without that, it would be bearing a lot of blame for this giant debt number to just attribute it to this cyber attack alone. So either it played less of a role than Stoli says, and maybe they want to place blame. Maybe they want to place a lot of blame on something that feels like a one-time incident that was totally out of their control and not problems that are core to their business as they're looking to shore up some funding, right?
Yeah, like generational shift.
Yeah. Or maybe they paid out. I don't know. It just seemed like something is being left unsaid here. That's the feeling I took away from this. But I would really like to hear everybody's perspective on what you thought about the story.
So my vibe was that they did not pay the ransom because it sounded like they were building everything back from scratch. And that's why it was going to take so much longer to come online. And I mean, when I saw that $3 million figure, for me, that was also, that's an average, right?
It's an average, but like, so... on the high end, it's double that. Like $85 million is much, much more than this ransomware attack, right?
Yeah, but I mean, think about what anyone in this industry, think about what it means for your ERP system to evaporate tomorrow and what that means for your business. And for somebody the size of Stoli USA and Kentucky Owl, that is staggering. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm off base, Jeff, but I feel like that is an incredible disruption to everything. And $3 million seems low to me.
But don't you think they would be losing money outside of this? And I'm not trying to cut into your time, but like that they would be losing money outside of this incident if you look at all the other factors that are impacting this company right now?
The other thing that comes to mind is that we have seen like precipitous drops in alcohol sales, especially as cannabis legalization has come online in states, and that will continue. That trend has continued as those markets mature. So that's a very real thing that they're going to have to deal with. And the shocking popularity of the mocktail NA market, that has continued to grow as well. And I'm sure that is going to eat into sales as well. But I do think that, I'm not going to say perfect storm because it kind of seems like, hey, maybe a lot of these issues were lingering. And kind of to your point about Anheuser-Busch, maybe they weren't, keeping up with some things that they maybe needed to and kind of got caught holding the bag here. But I don't know. I think that there are a lot of things stacked against them. But this one, I think, might have been way more expensive than we know. Jeff, you're the expert here. So like, I
don't know if I'm the cybersecurity expert here. I don't think I've earned that title yet.
You're the expert on the panel.
Of the three of us.
Yeah.
Math, cybersecurity.
I forgot.
Yes. I mean, almost every week is a reminder as to like how even something as small as password vulnerability could lead to something like this. And then you see it happen and you're just like, whew, Stoli. And it keeps happening to these huge operations where you feel like them, if anyone, should be shored up,
There's a lot of takeaways from this. Okay.
Yeah.
So
get into it.
Cut me off if I start going long here. But first of all, to your point about it being a big player that we've heard about, these are happening all the time to a lot of smaller players that we do not hear about. And that's part of the biggest issue we have in the industrial side is we're not talking about this stuff because people are afraid to.
Yeah.
And there's legit reasons for that in terms of losing customer confidence, in terms of talking about the remediation that it's going to take. it's embarrassing. Okay. And that's hard to embrace sometimes, but we need to hear more of this, especially from a company like Stoli. And in my opinion, especially the way that this went down, there is, first of all, no doubt in my mind that this is a state-sponsored attack. Yeah. If this was a ransomware group, they would have been promoting themselves and saying, we did it, we hit it, here's your data, here's your keys to get back online, whatever the case is, it's going to cost you. Those folks are just as much into promoting themselves as they are what they did. Mm-hmm. So there is no doubt that this is state-sponsored, especially when you look at the owner of Stoli and his very blatant criticisms of Putin. Yeah. So not a doubt in my mind there. And because of that, I also feel like they were ransomware and they did not pay it. That would be my guess. Because when they got in and they shut down the ERP, it would not have been that expensive from a ransomware group to pay to get back online and get up and running. Looking at a broader perspective, this reminds me of a UFC fight where the guy withstands that barrage and he's about ready to get back up, and the guy who's winning the fight hits him with one more left hook and he's done.
Yeah, and the lights go
It was
out.
just the last hit that they could take. The things that we can also take away from this attack, just from the ransomware side, I mean, you've touched on all the business elements here, the change in market, maybe they could have adapted more quickly, come out with more diverse products, whatever the case may be. But from a cybersecurity perspective, this could have been avoided. Mm-hmm. You're right. They always, to some extent, could have been limited, I should say. Maybe not avoided, but limited. One of the big things that we talk about in cybersecurity is segmentation. In other words, you've got security gaps at every portion of where things connect. So if they hack in here, they can't get in. They might get into your financials, but they can't get into the operational side. They might get into your supply chain stuff, but they can't get into your proprietary data. Whatever the case is, that was not in place here. If they were able to get in wherever they got in to the ERP, they got in throughout it, and there was no redundancies in place. There was no endpoint protections that allowed them to stop it.
Yeah, to kind of cut off the infection.
So all they could do was basically start over. I mean, they couldn't even pull the plug, it sounds like, at least in those cases where you can start over, use backup data, use old data and get up and running again. They couldn't even do that. So either the attack was that vicious or their defensive posture was really lacking, because maybe, and I don't know how they could have the mindset of not being attacked based on who they are and some of the political enemies they've made.
Yeah.
But it feels like that must have not been a priority. So it illustrates to everybody else out there, again, like we always say on Security Breach on the podcast, if you have data and any funding, you are a target. Mm-hmm. There is absolutely no way around that, especially in the industrial sector where they have a blueprint for going after your ERP and industrial control systems because of hacks like this and other stuff we see going at critical infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to your point, if you have any money in the bank and a connection point, you need to protect yourself. Yeah. But I think that it stands to reason that after the first time Russia tried to make you a state-owned business, you really should have shored things up, just because if there's, a top three, is Russia number one when it comes to state-sponsored attacks? Or
China's number one. China, okay. It's China, North Korea, Russia.
Yeah. And I mean, so that to me seems like either someone being a little too cocky, or, I just don't understand why you don't see that coming.
You don't think, why would somebody want to get in here? What is there to steal? That is the mindset a lot of times. I don't know how that pervades and continues to be the case, but that is the most likely circumstance saying, what are you going to get at? Oh, but I mean, what are you going to do?
I mean, but to that question, like a nation has literally been trying to steal your business. Yeah. Multiple times, and I guess maybe you don't think that taking down your ERP is the way they're going to do it.
Or maybe your thought is they want an intact business. Why would they cripple the business? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it is hard to reconcile, really.
The other thing that happens with a lot of manufacturers, especially smaller manufacturers, is they start getting into this and they see all the stuff and it just starts piling up and they don't know where to start. And the advice there is, start with the basics. Start with the first thing. You talk about passwords. Start with double factor authentication. Start with zero trust policies and things like that are going to get you just covered on the core. Because the harder you make their job, the more likely they are to go find somebody else. Mm-hmm. Now, I think these guys were targeted hardcore. Okay, I think Stoli was definitely gone after. You got to remember, these organizations are highly complicated, very well organized, and they probably had 5 or 6 different people with specialties in terms of, well, I'm the initial access guy. Mm-hmm. I'm the guy who's going to plant the malware. I'm the guy who's going to write the ransomware. All these types of things. They're all highly specialized. So when they get in there, man, and they get their hooks on you, It's tough.
Well, is part of this too that it was the ERP system? Do you think that when you purchase an ERP product from an ERP provider, that you think they have the security end of it and that maybe you don't need to have that shored up because they're doing it for you?
No, it's a great point. I mean, that's another big conversation that's taking place, not only between software providers, but anybody who has any type of embedded technology that's connecting to a legacy asset. Yeah. So it can be a drive, it can be a motor. It's not just software. And that's the ongoing debate. Who's responsible for that security? And the answer is both. Yeah. Everybody's got to be talking about security. People think they put data in the cloud and they're automatically secure. Talk to Amazon, make sure they're doing their end and you're doing yours as well. Another quick point here too is when they talk about ERP, a lot of times there's issues, and we've talked about this, between your IT department, your information technology, and your OT, your operational technology, and how they work in silos. They're not talking. That's how this type of stuff happens as well. Mm-hmm. You may not like that guy. You got to talk to him and you've got to understand their environments, whether you're IT or OT, it doesn't matter. Those two have to be working together in a manufacturing enterprise.
So Anna, now after what Jeff said, do you think that maybe it was more than a $3 million hit?
Well, I don't know that I don't think Jeff's points, speak to that. I don't think that was your point, right? I mean, obviously it was like a disaster for them for sure, but we still don't. If you don't think they paid out, then I don't know what it cost them to get back up and running. But I do think I still think a significant chunk of that money were problems from other areas. I think that was accumulation of effects.
Yeah. This is the straw.
Maybe the straw. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, before we move on to, in case you missed it, the stories that are maybe not as popular on our websites, Industrial Equipment News, manufacturing.net, among others, we have another word from our new sponsor, Stay Sharp with Razorleaf.
Digital transformation is reshaping manufacturing, and leaders must keep up with a rapidly changing technology landscape. Razorleaf, a global consulting and systems integration firm, launched Stay Sharp with Razorleaf, a podcast covering digital thread, digital twins, PLM, MES, data integration, and more. Whether you're a seasoned professional or new to digital transformation, this podcast will help you stay ahead of the trends. You can find Stay Sharp with Razorleaf on all major podcast platforms. Tune in today.
We're back. Just a reminder that this week's episode is brought to you by fellow podcaster Stay Sharp with Razorleaf, the ultimate podcast for all things digital in the manufacturing industry. Each episode takes a deep dive into the multifaceted world of digital transformation, exploring topics such as the digital thread, digital twins, IDEs, model-based strategies, and delving into the frontiers of cutting-edge technologies like PLM, MES, integration, and more. All right, in case you missed it, the stories, maybe not as popular, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Jeff, I'll start with you this week. What's your in case you missed it?
Yeah, I picked an article here. It talks about the Department of Energy investing $17 million to supply chain of critical materials for energy security. And that's a lot of words.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of words here when I start talking about the article. Just give me a sec here. But the U.S. Department of Energy announced an investment, like I said, $17 million. It's going to go across 14 projects that accelerate critical material innovation while promoting safe, sustainable, economic, and efficient solutions to meet current and future supply chain needs. So it's coming from the Department of Energy. It's not just renewable energy stuff. We're talking about materials for supply chain. We've talked about a ton of this, different areas. So these projects go across 11 states. They're focused on strengthening and streamlining manufacturing for high-impact components and technologies like hydrogen fuel cells, magnets for high-efficiency motors, high-performance lithium-ion batteries, and high-yield, low-defect power electronics. So looking at some of these different projects, again, using magnets with reduced critical materials. When we talk about anything from an electric vehicle to other transportation solutions, this is going to become important because we don't want to be we want to mine as least amount as we can. Yeah. We want to be smart with where we're sourcing from. Improving unit operations of processing and manufacturing critical materials. Looking at something like lithium. We've got one mine here in the U.S., so we need to be smarter about how we're going to do this. I thought this was a really important one. Recovering critical material from scrap and post-consumer products. Man, if somebody can figure out how to recycle EV batteries, that is where you want to be right now, especially when you look at all of those rare earth elements that are involved in those batteries. And then the last one here, talking about reducing critical material demand for clean energy technologies. So again, not a ton of money in the context of what we talk about in other instances, but when you're hitting this many projects and giving them in the neighborhood of $1 million to each one of them, this just spells out a lot of things that can lead to other things down the line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was really interesting in looking at some of these different areas, and hopefully if we can get more of our big manufacturing entities involved in these types of things, the automation companies, the sensor companies, who don't have a direct correlation to a lot of these material advancements, but definitely benefit from them when they take place, we can even do more here. But this is just a great start, I think, from the Department of Energy and some of these things, and we're definitely going to be hearing the results of these projects down the line.
No, I mean, to me, this story was in part a constant reminder of how, for my entire lifetime, we have talked about the importance of recycling and just the ongoing realization of how little we have figured it out and how little we've actually invested in terms of the logistical realities of making it happen and existing in our supply chain, reintroducing these materials into our supply chain. So the $2.7, the $2.8 million going to the Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University and Infinite Elements, I am really interested to follow those two threads. And, just as a Wisconsin homer, anytime you see somebody from Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, like Conovate, or is it Cionovate? Because it's like, I think it's Conovate, but the CO are intentionally capitalized.
Cionovate?
Yeah, Cionovate. Either way, as a Wisconsin homer, I always like to see those dollars being spent here as well. Anna, what were your thoughts on this story? Just in where some of the types of projects that the money is being allocated.
Yeah, I thought this was great. And you were more focused, I think, on the recycling side of it, which is great, of course. Mm-hmm. But the thing that caught my attention most was these projects that are looking to reduce the critical mineral content of existing technologies. I mean, that's huge. Like, that's like going back to the beginning and teaching somebody how to fish or, trying to figure out how to make these better so we don't need all that stuff in the first place.
Yeah.
Arguably that could play a greater role in, figuring out the supply chain hangups that we have here. So very cool story. Great to see this stuff roll out, especially as like the administration is on the verge of changing, seeing things still getting done.
Yeah. The reason that one wasn't the one that stood out the most to me was because...
You don't have to defend yourself.
Oh, no. Because two of the universities...
Yes, you do.
Well, there's the university and the lab. And those I understood because that's academia, that is deep R&D, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the other two companies that received allocations, to me, that was kind of just like getting paid to what you're already doing. Their entire business model is to use less of these critical materials to make better, more efficient products that are more profitable. So to me, that was how I read that. I was just like, oh, they get $4.2 million to kind of do what they're always doing in product development. But maybe this will jumpstart it.
I mean, if it's a research entity within those organizations, then... those companies are well equipped to make these types of advancements. I don't think we can ignore that, right?
No, completely agree. And if it is a lack of resources that are holding them behind, great.
I think material.
I was just going to say that and some of these were like universities, labs that were getting these.
Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, those two, the university and the lab, 100%, because that's deep R&D and academia. That's the stuff we're like. I love to read every day. What's going on there?
But like ABB and, funding their magnets, like studies, they're doing so much already. Like they are like ahead of the game on everything that they do. They do so much R&D. Like, I don't think that we have to only allocate dollars to unaffiliated research entity. Like, no,
I completely agree. When I read that particular part of it, to me, it read as, you're getting paid to do something you're already doing.
It doesn't seem like you agree.
If
you're clearly wrong, David.
Yeah.
That's why we're all here, guys, to show that we can have different points of view, still be fine on camera until it turns off.
Do you ever feel like a manti in the middle when we're having these conversations?
I've never been more uncomfortable with a statement. Do you want to be a manti in the middle? I never want that. No, I don't feel like that. And I'm not as passionate on this point as I am. But I mean,
well, I think it, maybe the last thought on this one, but like it underscores the fact that material science, it's always a bunch of little gains, and then you see the big one. Oh, yeah. So the more people I think you get involved to make all that little stuff to find the big leap, the better.
No, completely agree. All right. Now, since I'll play Manti in the middle here and I'll go next. My, in case you missed it this week, was Daimler Company to expand manufacturing footprint in Michigan. Detroit Diesel Corporation is a Daimler Truck North America subsidiary. The company this week announced plans to expand its manufacturing footprint in Redford Township, Michigan. The $285 million project will expand and diversify internal combustion engine and zero-emission vehicle component production for medium and heavy-duty trucks. The move will create up to 436 new jobs and retain some 2,000. Detroit Diesel makes diesel and electric powertrains, safety systems, and connected vehicle services for Freightliner and Western Star commercial trucks. Now, the reason I picked this story was because as I was going through it and reading it, what I liked was that there was both the investment in the ICE side of things, and the ZEV side of things. Now, because this plant has been in the community for more than 85 years, it has a legacy. And this investment is going to be supported by a $27.7 million performance-based grant from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. It's also going to get a state essential services assessment abatement worth up to $3.29 million from MEDC's Michigan Strategic Fund. And the point that really stuck out to me is that as zero emission vehicle development matures, the MEDC is making these types of investments as a way to diversify the state's supply chain, beyond just light vehicles, and help meet a growing demand for cleaner, more fuel efficient engines and components. I don't know. When I read this story, it just really stood out to me as this is a really smart move. We're not going one way. We're not going wholly the other way. We're kind of in the middle in terms of we're going to support this. We're going to support this end of it as well because we see that transition happening. Maybe not as fast as everybody else did, but we need to invest in it to make sure that we're protecting ourselves for the future. Just a side note, commercial trucks face very unique challenges in transitioning to more efficient technologies. There are problems with infrastructure, performance, reliability, cargo type, distance, and the terrains that they're going over. So you don't want to say the deck is stacked against this technology, but, it's a long road ahead. And I think investments like this are smart, calculated, and could be really impactful going forward and immediately impactful to Redford Township in Michigan. And I don't know if you had a chance to check out the story, but what'd you think?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I agree that it felt very balanced to me, like they were not putting all of their eggs in one basket, that it was a very, as you said, calculated investment in the future. And great for Michigan to be on top of this as well with some of those support packages because, as they talked about diversifying the state's supply chain beyond just light vehicles, I think that's been a priority for Michigan over the last few years. And I think it's been a smart one because we've seen lots of external pressures on light automotive, to say the least. And so moving in a direction of retaining your manufacturing footprint, but also, influencing other areas of growth, I think is important. So yeah, felt like a great win for that area.
Jeff, when a lot of these sort of public-private partnerships started coming about, like the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, as a way to bring business to the state, I will say that as a result of how we've seen them work in Wisconsin, I've remained very skeptical. But one that has been very exciting to follow has been Michigan's, because they've just, I hate to use the term, but they've had a lot of wins over the last few years, just in terms of investment, particularly in manufacturing, understanding the importance in the area and maintaining that kind of growth. When you look at this story about Detroit Diesel Corporation, what are your takeaways?
This is a little bit more money too than we've been seeing thrown around through these campaigns. So there must be a lot of confidence there. Obviously, Detroit Diesel, not new to this. They've been doing this for a little bit.
Yeah, you look at the aerial photo and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think it warrants a greater level of investment. I think what I liked is we've got this overarching mandate that says we're going to do electric vehicles. That's just sort of the consensus that's been driven by political systems and really the automakers on any level, which I would include Detroit Diesel amongst them. And to see that there's support government-wise saying we're not just going to make you do this or we're just going to tell you this is what you should do, we're going to back that up and give you some funds and support you in doing that, I think makes that process much more palatable to the manufacturer. And hopefully a lot of this can also be done to help encourage drivers to see some of maybe the benefits that are like a company electric vehicle, operation. So yeah, I think this is overall very, very positive, obviously. And I think those are the things that I took away the most, just providing that support along with the, for lack of a better term, the mandate or the direction that they want everybody to go in.
True. Well, and as we've seen tied to almost all of these incentives, all performance-based. So, prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it first, not just blank check. Here you go. Anna, what's your In Case You Missed It this week?
I picked an automotive story as well about GM to stop funding their cruise unit and basically retreating from the Robotaxi market.
Yeah, this is wild.
I know, it's crazy. So GM, they said they will stop funding their money-losing Cruise autonomous vehicle unit and retreat entirely from robotaxis. Instead, the Detroit automaker is going to focus on development of partially automated driver assist systems for personal vehicles like the Super Cruise, which will allow drivers to take their hands off the steering wheel. Thank God. GM said it would get out of robotaxis, quote, given the considerable time and resources that would be needed to scale the business, along with an increasingly competitive robotaxi market. Since buying a controlling interest in Cruise in 2016, GM has invested billions into the subsidiary. They eventually bought 90% of the company, all while racking up millions in losses. The move is said to be another step back for autonomous vehicles, which have proved, I think, far harder to develop than companies once anticipated. So the article goes on to detail how there is a bit of a fork in the road here. And so therefore you see things like this GM announcement and also like Ford and VW shut down Argo AI 2 years ago, maybe. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you see companies like Waymo and Tesla who are almost doubling down on their initiatives with robo-taxis and investing very heavily in those areas. I think it's an interesting topic because you see these major automakers essentially walking away from the idea of scaling this business, robo-taxis, mm-hmm. as just too much. And they can't do it on any kind of reasonable timeline without losing their shirt. So I don't know if it's a lack of confidence in that business model or if it's simply that there are too many players and it's time for some of them to bow out. I can't tell if it's like a black eye or if it's just the natural progression of what we're going to see here, kind of like we saw with a bunch of EV startups that started to go away over time as the market kind of coalesced around some more major players. Is it that, or is it that it's just so costly and there's no demand for it really yet?
Or like in the grand scheme of things, is it smart? Are they getting out early?
I don't know. That's the thing. And that's why I found this story to be so interesting is because like, it's obviously it's a business move at face value, but like, what is happening with this market? What do we get in 2 years? What's it going to look like? Because, it's been going heavily investment wise going since, the mid 2010s. And there's not certainly we have vehicles being tested on public roads. But I don't know that there's quite this this scale that these automakers thought they would have at this time. Yeah. So, is Tesla in 2 years, like they say, going to be having a corner on this market? I don't know. Or is this market just fizzling? It's hard to tell.
I'm interested to know, like, what does the market look like and what is the market cap? Because when I see the success of this market is just the full on replacement of Uber and taxis as we know it, right? And there has to be a number wrapped around like what that's worth. And I don't know that it exceeds beyond that for the foreseeable future. One thing that I pulled out of this story from the AP was, so like you said, since GM bought a controlling stake for Cruise, in Cruise for $581 million in 2016, the service has piled up more than $10 billion in operating losses while bringing in less than $500 million in revenue. That's according to a GM shareholder report. That is wild. And I mean, I get it. Like, innovation, R&D, the future costs money. But Jeff, is it surprising to you that now GM pulls the plug?
It's surprising, but it shouldn't be, I guess. I think there's a couple things at play here. First of all, I think everything that's going on with Tesla and autopilot has really put a lot of bad taste in people's mouth from a consumer perspective in terms of what is this? Yeah. Don't call, because again, we've talked about this to death, but like, don't call it autopilot, call it assisted driving. That's what it is. Yeah. And that's kind of what GM's doing here. I don't think they're retreating on potentially developing autonomous technology. They're just getting out of this particular game because I think what they're seeing is the cost of getting there isn't going to equate to the return you're going to see by being first. Yeah. Let somebody else do that. We see this in a lot of other markets. Pharmaceuticals is a big one. Let somebody else develop the drug, and then when the copyright or trademark wears off, I'll just put out a generic.
Yeah.
Similar dynamic is what this feels like because those other companies, that's all they do. GM's got a couple other things cooking that they need to focus on right now. So I think it makes a ton of sense. It's kind of, I don't know what the right word is. Amazing they allowed themselves to lose that much money on it.
Yeah. But it does make sense that GM, if GM focuses on a differentiator like better ADAS systems, that's something that has market impact now. That's something that sets you apart. And I mean, I'll admit, like I just bought a vehicle with it and I'm still working on it. But that is like how much better it is than the previous vehicle. I mean, like I can see that being something that would be a differentiator for a new car buyer.
But I think Jeff is right. I think what is the differentiator between like being first to market or second to market or whatever, Yeah. Even Tesla right now, who is at least positioning themselves as being at the front of the line here. Elon says 2026 on Robotaxis, but somebody recently quoted, I think an exec, I don't know who it was, maybe unnamed exec, saying that like at least initially they plan to have remote controls of those, like remote drivers to take. So they're not even going to be ready if we are to believe that 2026 is realistic, which coming from Tesla, you never know. Yeah. So there's going to be a long time. There's no way it's profitable to put out brand new technology that costs billions in R&D and then still pay a person to drive it from wherever they are.
Yeah. A video game console.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's a long way off to make this profitable. And I agree. I think like there's other things you can be doing while this like works its way out. And then you can figure it out later if you want to get in that business. But
no, it just makes sense to focus on your core competencies, be better.
Yep.
And then, buy the little guy later. All right. Well, let's jump into our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what's your final thought this week? I
just wanted to say as our 200th episode under our belts here that it's been a lot of fun, guys. And let's keep going. When I did the math this afternoon as to how many weeks and years 200 episodes was, I got a little bit sick about that. But like, because it feels like we just started this.
Yeah.
And it's been like 4 years, but it's been a good 4 years, guys.
No, my final thought was similar. I've really enjoyed the first 200. I was kind of joking about.
I thought you were going to say the first 2 years.
Oh no, yeah, the first 2 years were great. We've gotten through the second two. No, but I was kind of saying to 200 more because to your point, it does seem like we've just started it, and I think it's because it is continuing to evolve. But I also think it's because, for me anyways, I genuinely enjoy it. I enjoy the interaction that we have with our regular people that interact in our community. And honestly, I just enjoy like every Thursday getting ready to see what's coming from both sides. and constantly being surprised.
Are we renaming the podcast Manti in the Middle?
We're not. Not working title. Not working title. No, but also like,
could we have like some sort of like 80s sitcom intro for that too?
Hey, we're
Alex, you got something there?
Hey, we're the Mantis.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. As long as at some point I get to jump and I'm freeze framed in some sort of awkward position.
Like Manti in charge.
Oh, God.
Manti in charge.
That's right. Oh, no. Nobody wants that. But also, like, I think it's a testament to how we continue to surprise each other, too. Like, when, we start the story and you're just like, hey, I'm going to be optimistic on an electric bus. And I'm just like, didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
I know.
Gotcha.
So, sorry to kind of piggyback off of your final thought, Anna, but no, I agree. It's been fantastic. And small update on the filter situation. I changed those filters and my God, it's a whole new machine. Again, reminder to, if you have something that wants you to change a filter, do it. This thing's purr now.
So you've been getting to do a lot more vacuuming.
It's been great.
That's good.
I just, of all my sinful guilty pleasures, like if I enjoy vacuuming, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Elon
The
Musk
holidays
is
are
going to be
coming up.
super
Yeah.
disappointed. You like to vacuum and shop for yourself. You don't want robots or e-commerce doing any of that.
We could do an entire other podcast on how those robotic vacuums are trash. And the only way that they work is that I know where it's going to pile the garbage in my house that I need to hit with the vacuum. For another day, Jeff.
All right.
What's your final thought this week?
Well, I've also enjoyed the last 200 episodes.
I was
going to say it's the last 199, but no, it's all 200. I've enjoyed them.
You have to
Last
say it
couple
now
years.
because
Yeah.
we both said it.
Whoops. The thing that's been the most enjoyable is when we get feedback from our audience. Always viewers, watchers, audience. One this week that I especially enjoyed came from Colin. If you remember when we were talking last time, we were discussing things like potential sticking points with your partner when you're married, things that can really drive a wedge. You know, for me, it was like we were washed windows. Nothing bad happened. What was your example, Anna?
Clogged bathtub.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, even though you got shower of
I got blasted
Drano.
with Drano, but I survived and I can still see. So.
Well, Colin weighed in on this one. I thought he had a great thing. He said, people would say if you can wallpaper a room with your spouse, you will stay married forever. They wallpapered the dining room in 1978, which is how long ago, math guy?
A bit.
Oh.
That'd be 46 years, and they've been married 48. So congratulations, Colin.
Good for you, Colin.
Colin, you got it.
Yeah, well done. We also did a little trivia last week, and nobody got it right.
No one got it right?
The responses.
Are you saying
in
no one
of,
or are you saying no one?
Nobody. So basically based on, we did Hollywood Square style. So in terms of people's agreeing or disagreeing with Nolan and Anna's answers, no one got it.
Oh, okay.
So that's still out there. But we'll build on that one with a couple of new ones.
All right.
All right. David, do you want to go first or second?
I'll go second.
You're going to go
Seems fair.
second? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Anna. What is the safest way to store an unused refrigerator?
For how long?
Store an unused refrigerator.
David, these are from 1986 from a small tool and die manufacturer in Eustis Ford, Wisconsin.
Okay, what was 86 before or after the episode of Punky Brewster when Cherry gets stuck in the refrigerator? Okay.
Very poignant.
Yeah, really does bring that to mind. A store? I'm flummoxed because why would you store?
I mean, that's a good question, but it doesn't answer the question.
In a locked room?
Okay. That's your answer?
That's my answer. I have no idea.
It is better than one of yours from last time where you said run screaming from the room.
Yeah. Did anyone agree with me on that?
Well,
I also said put a lid on it.
Put a lid on it.
And then run screaming from the room. It was a 2-part answer.
Yes. All right. So just put it in a locked room.
I guess so,
That's
yeah.
what you're going with.
I
All
don't
right.
know.
What? Wait. Oh, so I don't answer that one?
No, you answered this. This is yours.
Oh, okay.
And by
Okay.
the way, Nolan Beilstein picked out these questions. So don't come after me.
I will come after
Wait.
Nolan.
So no one picked these out?
Nolan.
Oh, okay.
Come on, David. David, what is the correct... Geez, my eyes are bad. What is the correct safe angle for an extension ladder?
Ooh.
What's the correct angle for an extension ladder?
I'm going to say the correct angle.
So when you're watching Christmas Vacation.
No, I know. I'm trying to think what that angle
Chevy
is.
Chase is putting that ladder up.
I'm going to say 22 and a half degrees.
22 and a half degrees. All right. Let me know if you agree or disagree with David and Anna's responses. We'll put together a nice little holiday package for you today in manufacturing gear.
When was our first episode? Did you check that out at all? When did it publish? Yeah.
I know it was this summer.
February of 2021.
Yeah.
Oh.
February 5th, 2021.
That was up here, man.
That is wild. It took so much scrolling for me to find it. But yeah, that is, like you said, seems so recent. And then when you put an actual number to it, you're just like, how life is so different. And I encourage people to check out the new intro that Alex cut together for this episode, just because, you don't think you change a lot in 4 years. Mm-hmm. And then you see it in front of your face and you're like, where did it go? All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, for our 200th episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.